Hey, cousins. Welcome to S.A.S.S, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording is started, and by participating in S.A.S, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which are posted here in the chat and on our website under the S.A.S tab as well. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We will get started with a few announcements and then get into the good witchy stuff.
Yeah, and I could post those terms in just a moment.
I haven't.
You have them, Ocean. Awesome. Thank you. And I don't have too many announcements today. I think that we did our town hall, so for any members interested, you could watch that replay. And just wanted to say that for any members, our autumnal convergence tickets are posted on the website. So if you are interested in coming to the autumnal convergence, which is at the end of September, beginning of October, you can check that out on the website. We're really excited to kick that off and get that going. And so, yeah, I think that's all the announcements for today, unless anyone has any other announcements. Thanks, everyone.
I'm pushing too many buttons and getting confused. I'm confusing myself already. And it's what, 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. How are you guys doing? How's your weekend going so far? Does anyone have any burning questions or something that you've been thinking about? I actually spent the day playing croquet in my front yard in a sundress with a bunch of local friends and a bunch of ridiculousness. It was awesome. We were expecting rain, but we ended up having absolutely perfect weather, just like sunshine and fluffy clouds and butterflies and fucking flowers everywhere. And it was just like, it was amazing. We're talking about the next party that we have doing a inflatable mounted sprinkler polo. Yeah. Oh man, that would be so much fun to just get video of. So got 3 friends that already have those, you know what I mean by inflatable mounts, you know how it looks like you're riding something. We want to set up sprinklers and just see what happens. I like throwing parties a lot. I really like. Kim can attest to that. I like throwing parties and theme parties and just giving people an excuse to kind of step out of the mundane and just do something crazy just for the sake of doing like onesie pub crawls and that kind of stuff. Going to the movies in your pajamas with a bunch of I like it everything changes when you do it with like a bunch of other people. And I think it's funny that it wasn't until later in life that I learned that, neurodivergent people kind of tend to run in packs. And that was my life. A big group of people doing nonsense stuff. Can you guys hear Kava? Can you hear that grinding sound on the okay, good. 'Cause she's very loud, chewing on a bone against my door on the other side. And so it's just like I can hear everything. Everyone's kind of quiet. Do you guys want to see my new tarot deck? Just like, why not? Have you guys heard of the Doodle Tarot yet? The Doodle Tarot? Well, I talked to them. I at doodletarot.com or something like that. You can buy directly from the artist that created this deck. But I usually read for readers, for witches who do readings. So the way that I do things is like different. And I like the cards that have just the basic outline of what the meaning is on the card for that reason, because it directs the conversation a little bit differently than someone who has like a personal relationship with the cards, right? Um, but look at these. Look at these cards. Aren't they adorable? And the back is like that. But look at the side. Like the sides are black. Like how cool is that? The whole deck is just gorgeous. I haven't even used them yet. I haven't done a reading yet with them, but I just thought they're the cutest thing ever. Like, aren't they? Anyway, guys, are you just happy to be here? Is that what's going on? Just connected. Hi, Morgana.
Hello. Um, Both of these seem like odd questions, but I feel compelled to ask them anyway. Um, the first one seems very, very rude, but I'm just going to throw it up there. So I had this um, experience in the netherworld. So same place that you connect to if you're head riding or on a shamanic journey. Initially, I explained it um, as the Led Zeppelin cover Houses of the Holy. That was the closest example that I had. And then I don't know who's familiar with the series OA on Netflix, but season 1, episode 4, the main character passes into the netherworld. And they totally flipped out because the representation they had in the show matched perfectly what I thought. And it can't be coincidence because there's not such thing as a coincidence. But I don't know where to put it. And it seems significant.
Can I ask some clarifying questions?
Totally.
Okay. So is this a question of, when I went into this space, this is what I experienced, and then when I watched this show, the representation that this show had of this same space was the same, and what the fuck is up with that? Is that the question? Like, what do you think is up with that?
Pretty much. Or I'm like, am I just losing my shit? And has anybody else experienced this? Is the other way to put it too.
Oh, I love this. No, I actually really love this because I do think that there's something to that. It's also some of that like magical what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Did you foresee this? Or
Oh,
is this right? Because it could be the both ways. And oftentimes we don't get a real answer. Like, did I
I,
make it rain or did I know that rain was coming? Like
yeah,
that kind of stuff happens to me so frequently. So that's how I would see it. Or the other way around of that we are so much more connected than we give ourselves credit for. It's the disconnection that is the illusion. And
yeah,
so it would not surprise me at all if like maybe there is some astral place like that multiple people are drawn to or connected to in some way and are given that in some kind of creative vision. There's so much to this. I would love to hear if anybody has any like theories about it. Uh, but
Yeah.
the first thing that comes up for me is that like, well, was that foresight uh into this? Because do you have a connection with that show?
Um,
Like, is it something one that you really like?
um, I have a friend who's really passionate about it, introduced me to it, and like that happened like days ago, and I can't stop watching it. So yeah, yeah, I'm hooked. There's a lot of it that makes sense to me. So yeah.
A part of me wants to say that I have watched it, but I ADHD watch things. So I like have it on as I'm doing other things and because I can't sit and like watch through like and it's very rare that I can do that.
Mhm.
But I wonder if this is just like highlighted for you for some reason. And that experience was something to get your attention. Is there a question that you've been asking or something kind of you can use it like divination in a way? Do you see what I mean by that? Where if you have this question and this show is highlighted for you, what is it
Mhm.
in this show that is in some way an answer to that question?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
The show is centered around like a, the theory of multi dimensions and passing through multi dimensions when you quote unquote die. So so it's this weird convoluted like past lives aren't past lives. They're like a continuation of your existence kind of thing. So yeah. Um definitely kind of is definitely kind of a special interest. Even if there's no feedback, I gotta like think about this for a little bit. So I'll loop back and ask you.
I'm feeling a binge watching session in your future. Like, all right, let's get the popcorn and the Pepsi and let's figure this shit out.
Well, I'm on. There's only 2 seasons. I'm like halfway through season 2. I'm probably just gonna like recycle, go through it again. So yeah, so I have lots to think about.
Oh, hmm. We can just sit here and collectively take a deep breath and think into what we want to share and what comes up. I'm down for like sharing space too. And I think that that's something that we don't do enough. We're so trained that silence is awkward and that silence must be filled. And then actually sitting and sharing space. Hi, Ian. And just like being present is something that we don't do very often. It's not like it's considered weird, but man, those friends that you can just be present with and not have to fill the silence. Oh man, those are some good ones. Go ahead, Ocean.
So I can relate a little bit to what you're talking about, Morgana. Except instead of a TV show, it was like it's like my dreams. Like I don't really know anything at all about hedge writing, but I'm really interested in like learning about it. And so, but I I tend to have these really heavy dreams sometimes that feel super real. And it does feel like I'm dropping like down into like another space, but I always thought it was just a part of my own consciousness. I never considered that it was like another dimension. So that's fun to think about. Um, and there was one time where I was swimming in my hometown, downtown, like the whole town was like covered in water, and I was swimming and like scuba diving downtown. And I remember coming to S.A.S. the next day, and I was like, you guys, the whole like valley that I'm living in is about to flood. And this was actually like last year around the same time. I think it was like around like uh May, June-ish. And then all those rains hit California, and there's a lot of flooding and stuff going on there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I've always wondered if it was correlated, but in my dream, it just seemed so extreme, like there was just such an extreme amount of water. So there's part of me that still wonders if like maybe I was like jumping forward in the future, because like they've been predicting for years that like California is going to have like an earthquake at some point that's either going to split like open the middle and let all the water come into the valley, and the valley will be like super flooded, or there's a lake above my hometown that the dam is predicted to also be hit by an earthquake and taken down. So that's something I totally play with my subconscious too. Is like, am I connected? Am I aware? Am I experiencing the future? And uh, how much am I actually affecting my environment, or is my environment affecting me? Like, because I'm super connected to water, so there is a part of me that wonders if the element of water feels comfortable maybe speaking to me. But there's a lot of possibilities that are super fun to play with. And I also wanted to bring up my own subject too, if that's okay. I am in the middle of my Saturn return in astrology, my very first one, and it is really interesting, and it's really cool to be aware during that time. I think that it's if I wasn't aware, I would be having a really difficult time coping, because there's a lot happening, and it feels like so it's from 27 to 30 usually, or like within those years. It doesn't always take up all of them. And it feels like I'm in the middle. It feels like I'm at like the peak of it right now. There's like just so much going on in like every aspect of my life. And it feels transformational because of the shadow work I've been doing here. It doesn't feel as much of a tower moment as I think it would have felt before I started a Bright and Dark. Uh, but I just wanted to know if anybody, is into astrology and uh, had any like thoughts or uh, insight on Saturn return, because here I am.
Astrology is actually not like my cup. Like I dance around the saucer every once in a while, but I don't know enough about it to be like, "Ah, blah 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 blah." So, um, if anybody has any like experience or insight or anything, please.
I wish I did, Ocean. I was looking my stuff up and reading about it and all that kind of stuff, but I haven't done. I know that I'm a Pisces something, which is kind of like makes me um aloof seeming, whatever. But but I've just gone on websites and looked and tried to do my birth chart, and also I got this really because I don't understand all those squiggly lines and stuff. So I got this book. I got this book that'll describe each and every one of those pieces, and that will also I also got like a graph paper that was circular so I could plot my note out to understand it a little better. I don't know if that would be helpful, but sometimes just taking it piece by piece helps me. And I'm still planning to do it, but as you can tell, I'm tortured by 2 year olds. Hold on, I got to get her. Okay.
Yeah, I've been looking into my chart and stuff too, and like reading about it more. I should really take a class on it, honestly, is like where I'm at, because I'm really into it, but just keep like just kind of like dipping my toe in when I should just be jumping into it full on cannonball.
Sounds I am all for following the things that you're interested in and curious about. So yeah, like, nudge nudge. Did anyone do anything for the summer solstice this week? Dang. Go ahead, Karen.
I did my spring planting. It's a little late, but and I don't plant. I mean, the spellcraft that we did, that this it. I mean, it sprouted and then it dried out and died. I forgot about it and I felt horrible. But then I had other witches tell me, yeah, no, mine died. The cat ate it. Mine molded. So I didn't feel so bad. But I was mindful and I went and got clay pots from the Home Depot and I painted them and I planted a bunch of stuff and I put like this the planet, that the symbol for the planet they represent and the symbol for the element that they correspond with, and painted them all different colors and everything. So, and they sprouted and they look so cute. I'll take a picture and put them in the Discord, or not Discord. It'll always be Discord. So, but yeah, I mean, I did that and just being grateful. I'm appreciating, wishing I was up there on top of the world. And next year, it's like, I'll make a deal with you. I'll come up north. I'll just clean your house because I ain't gonna be able to sleep when the sun's up. So bring a bunch of us up there to do your house cleaning all night. Because I just think that's so, just the energy from it. I love the energy that comes with summer. I'm a summer baby. I don't know astrology either, but I think that, I feel like I was born in August, so it's just something that I've always had an affinity for, the summertime. And so, other than that, as far as like Saturn retrograde and Mercury retrograde, I don't put a whole lot of stock in that, and because it just never, I mean, I feel like it takes away accountability from me, my actions, or it removes the choice. Oh, well, I can't go to that movie tonight. Don't you know this is going to happen? And I feel like it's something that would be limiting me. So I just take it with a grain of salt and look at it retrospectively, like when shit happened, goes, okay, well, that might have a little something to do with why I was a little bit of an asshole. I don't know, maybe, or whatever, from, as opposed to having fear of, oh no, it's coming up with this or that and retrograde, and you know I use it on the other end of it. That's just my take on it. But I don't know. Happy S.A.S, y'all. Miss y'all during the week, so stop in and see us in the cafe. Love you. Bye.
Jen Maria has a weigh-in. Shauna Chana, is yours a weigh-in on the current subject? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let Jen Marie go first, and then I'll get to you. Okay, cool.
I love that what you brought up, Karen, in that there are so many different is it modalities that witches use? Is that what we would call it? Modalities or connections or like, uh, and all of them can be used for connection or control. All of them can be done. And a lot of times we kind of like bounce around depending on what's going on in our life. And that's one of the reasons why participation in your lived experience is so important in doing that deconstruction work and that kind of stuff so that you can use those different things like astrology for connection and understanding, just to kind of um, get a broader picture of things. But absolutely it can be used as a tool for fear and control. And when we it is possible to like dive too deep and forget that, it is more about being present with your life, and doing this stuff than it is to constantly be, like, running from things, or I can't do that because of that, and I can't do this because of this. When it comes to, you know, you can sit and do pendulum work and like dictate your entire life on a pendulum if you wanted to. You can do the same thing, dictate your entire life on astrology or tarot or all of these kinds of things, these tools for insight. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I'm gonna let Chana take over.
Let me unraise my hand before I forget. Okay, so I had a really weird experience this week. I'm a very, very new broom-ish. So I had, but it didn't freak me out, which is weird because 6 months ago, it would have sent me like running. So growth, right? But my husband had pulled, we were cleaning out, moving his office because we have a teenager coming to live with us. Well, anyway, that's living with us now. So we're cleaning that up for her, and it had been my daughter's room. And so my husband found this little moon light, like it's like a little replica of the moon, and it sits in a little base and changes like a nightlight type of thing. And he thought it was cool, so we plugged it in over by my altar. I and it just sat there. I picked it up and I found the base. I moved it and I set it on the altar, and it went on. And I thought it was because I touched it. Apparently, it's not a touch light. So then I ran around, tried to figure out how to turn it off. We finally got it to go off. And then I left the room and came back like 10 minutes later, and it had gone back on. Like this went on like all day, where this light just kept going on by itself, like no one touching it. And so I finally got it to go off. We were getting in bed. My husband had gone in the bathroom, and the darn thing goes on again, like just turns itself on, right? So I went over, I got the remote. I'm like, this thing has to have a glitch. Picked up the remote, went back to bed, turned it off. 2 minutes later, if that, because my husband was still in the bathroom. And we know husbands can be there forever, but like this was a quick one. Like it was like within 2 minutes, right? It turns on and starts flashing. It does different colors, which it hadn't done yet. So it's like flashing these colors. And I'm like getting a little frustrated because it's like, midnight, we're trying to go to, I'm like, okay, whoever's playing with the light, knock it off. We're going to bed. Like, stop playing with it. Turned it off. It hasn't gone on since. I can't get it to go on again. So I asked a friend who is far more advanced in her psychic abilities than I am. I just told her about it. I'm like, it's so weird because now it won't go back on. And I don't know what was turning it on, but now I'm curious. And she goes, it's an elemental. And she's like, it's not your, she's like, I'm not getting any bad vibes. I'm like, no, I didn't get any bad vibes off of it. It was just annoying me because we were trying to go to sleep. And she's like, it got the message. It's just curious. It's just playful. But now I can't get, I scared off my first experience with an elemental, and I scared it off. And the sad thing is we invited them in because I was having trouble with plants and anyway, that's a longer story, but like, anyway, so now I don't know how to reconnect with it because I keep like trying to talk to him. Like I put the moon back on the altar. I'm like, you could play with it, just don't do it when we're trying to sleep. But now I feel bad because the first one that tried to connect with me, I got mad at it and told it to knock it off. So I am open to suggestions if anyone's had experience with them or how to communicate, because this is not really like, these experiences are so wild and out of the blue for me that I'm just rolling with it. So anyway, Jen Marie, take it away.
All right. So first of all, a little background. My partner's an electrician, and so like he's always having me plug things into other outlets just to check for that kind of stuff, because that kind of stuff happens to me all of the time. And so like he's on top of things again, like, okay, well, that's being really weird and I've never seen something do that before. Let's plug it into another outlet just to make sure that we're not going to have a house fire, or something's not shorting out. So I would always recommend checking that first, because as someone who survived 2 house fires growing up from crazy things like that, that's always something to like. Electricity is not something to like fuck around with. But if you're feeling as if it was something trying to reach out or connect with you, you'll have another opportunity to. It's not like that kind of stuff usually isn't a one and done thing. If there's an opening, if there is an invitation or a place, it will come back because there's a place for it. And a lot of times that place is just a matter of us accepting or being or inviting, not I want to be careful with that, because I don't recommend that anyone work with entities until they understand their own system and what their system feels like, and they learn healthy boundaries in the physical world before they start going into the spiritual world. Because if you don't have boundaries there, like you're going to be bringing another whole world of problems. um so but this could be different. The other thing is learning to trust your own interpretation of the energy that you are interacting with. Because when we go to other people, and I have people ask me all the time, well, what do you think this is? And if I'm not there experiencing the energy myself, I am going off of someone else's interpretation of that energy, right? So if you were telling me of the experience, I'm going off of your interpretation of that. And that's not necessarily the same as how I would interpret if I was there experiencing it. And so by going to someone else and saying, hey, I had this experience, what is it? It could be an elemental to them, but it could be something else for you, uh, because it interacts with you differently. Your system connects to things differently than everybody else. We're supposed to all be a little bit different. Um, so yeah, if you experienced it once, there's a foothold somewhere or an opening somewhere, so you'll be able to experience it again. And oh, I'm like getting all these like little half sentences and half pictures, and it's a little bit frustrating. It's like, huh, okay. Um, yeah, as when interacting with like energetic sides of things, my or beginning to explore that, doing your own like shadow work and diving into your emotional state when you experience those things, right? So when you have an experience like that, and like you're in your house and you hear noises, if you go right to fear, it's going to interact with that. Oh God, not interact. That's not the word. Um, how do I explain this? Hmm. I don't know why I'm just right up against the wall. This is fun. you have a lot more influence on what is going on, again, than we give ourselves credit for. And when beginning to open yourself up to the spiritual side of things, you want to come at it as neutral as possible. Because if you're coming at it in a place of fear, like, I want to open myself to this, but I haven't done any work on what I believe these energies are, and there's still bedtime stories of horrible, they or like horror films that you saw of interest, or similar things playing in your head, that all feeds into your experience. So deconstructing that before you start opening yourself up to the, again, spiritual or energetic world will make it to where you're not drawing things in based on that energy that you hold, right? You want to be that as neutral as possible. And if you get to where that neutrality is something that's really hard to hold on to, then it's like a step back and calm your nervous system and then come back to it, kind of thing. Prioritizing your nervous system and your center when you're engaging with uh, the unseen or uh, other dimension stuff. It's so broad and vast. I don't think that there's like a blanket word for that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So I think a little background on that is I've worked with some other psychic intuitives like on stuff a lot lately, and elementals have come through very strongly as guides for me every time with different people. So I'm one of those that's like the first person to tell me something, maybe. The second and the third time different people tell me the same thing, I'm like, okay, this, So I've had them come through. I know I have a water element that's a strong spirit guide, and I tend to think that these are just more of the same. So they don't scare me. I just felt really bad that I like yelled at it, like, because I tend to think that's what it is. It's not like the Fae have suddenly come in because we built fairy houses in the garden. I think these are ones that are around all the time that are just, so they're not scary. I have no interest at this point in going out and seeking out other entities to go play with, but I do have a really unique tribe of spirit guides that I think are starting to be a little more communicative, and some things hanging around that I'm not familiar with. Like, it's weird because none of it's scaring me. Like, again, 6 months ago, it would have terrified me to have that going on, right? Um, so it's just, but now it's curious. I'm curious. Like, so I don't know, but I get your point. Like, don't go inviting things in. So I tend to, anyway, so that's why I think they're my spirit guides, because I've also been told that my guides are, I have an interesting set of guides. Jen, someday I'll tell you about these, because some of them are like, it's wild. Anyway, wild. But I've been told they're very protective, that they're not going to let anything in for reasons. But they also have me on training wheels, which is annoying as hell to me, just for the record. And so that's why I'm like, always feel like I'm kind of grasping at things. Like, things are coming in, but like, I don't know. It's like being given toys to play with, and then they're like, oh, just kidding, we're going to take those back for a minute. And so anyway, that's kind of what that felt like a little bit. Is like, oh, I'm going to try and communicate with you. Oh, nope, you yelled at me. Now I'm going to, like, take off. And I don't know. Anyway, so that was rambling. It has been a really, really wild few weeks. So anyway, I'll turn that over to anyone else that wants to.
This is great, Jenna. Okay, how many of you guys, by show of hand, like hearts, if you want to heart react, has it been a crazy couple of weeks? Like, barely holding on, big shifts, lots of stuff. It's like the season. This is the season for just like very full, big energy, lots of shifts, lots of stuff going on. The feeling signature of overwhelm is a really common uh, feeling for this time. But I think that I mean, I'd like to continue talking about this, China, because I think it's interesting and important, um, because like a lot of people get like your spirit guides confused with like like how do you tell the difference between a spirit guide and an ancestor and an elemental, or like a visiting spirit, or like a demonic entity or an entity wanting to cause harm or that kind of stuff. And I think it's a good thing to talk about, like how do you know the difference between those things? And that I don't believe that, I mean, the different traditions have similar like threads, but there isn't a consensus on any of this stuff. And so when that is the case, I tend to go to, okay, it's about the relationship then. It's about the kind of relationship that you cultivate with whatever it is that you are experiencing. And like I've said before, some people don't experience spirit guides. They don't experience uh, that part of the human experience as different entities helping or guiding. They experience it as a part of their system, like their system, like a guidance system, a part of like this internal like beacon that they have. So and I like every opportunity that I get to point that out, because a lot of people think that there's something wrong with them when they aren't experiencing actual like other entities. They think that they don't have guides or don't have this like guidance system that comes with the human experience, because we are so much more tapped in and connected to things than we give ourselves credit for. I mean, I should probably like write that down. That's come up how many times in the last 45 minutes? Um, Mine tend to be more internal, but I'm definitely learning the difference between, uh, see, I don't even like using the word internal and external. I'm definitely connecting with, um, like entities that are not familiar. I think that that's a good way of explaining that, more and more. And I think that that is because of that invitation that I've gotten to the point in my practice that I can manage that and navigate that. But with like the distinguishing between who is here to help and who is here to interact in a control or domination based vibe, right? Your guides or guidance system isn't going to uh, punish you. They're not going to require you to do anything. They're not going to withhold something from you, in that they're not going to withhold something that is meant for you, right? They're not going to they're also not gonna let anything through that isn't meant for you, right? So it's both sides of that coin, but they're not going to be like, uh, playing with you, like you're or trying to control your experience. They are there to help. And that like still small voice that you hear about in Sunday school, or that like the gentle nudging, that's what your guidance system or your guides are like. Is it's just this, hey, did you think about this? Or um, look at that light there. Isn't it interesting? And you're like fascinated with this light as like a car, like, drives by, and like, you know, like miss it by millimeters, right? And you don't get hit because you were fascinated by this like little light. That's more like what they're like than um like directly intervening with things. In the end, like I've found that that it's about my authentic choice as the advocate for my system that is the human experience, right? So it's my choices. And the whole point is that I choose things. And if they're like withholding something or like directly intervening with things, I can't choose authentically because someone else is making those choices for me, right? So that is more of like a gentle nudging. Uh, entities that are wanting to control or wanting to dominate will require things of you, will require sacrifices, will require um, favors, will directly tell you to do things. Your guides or guidance system, that's not going to tell you, you have to do this. You have to do this or you're going to be like, you know, hurting or like some kind of threat. Do you see the difference there? Where it's this like gentle inspiration, kind of feathery feeling, and then there's this, if I don't do this, I'm, you know, I won't get what I want or I won't get what I need, or there's some kind of threat involved. Those are the two, or fear or lack that is kind of used as coercion. There isn't coercion with guides or like um, entities that want to cooperate with you or are interested in cooperating with you. Go ahead, Tiana.
Oh, I didn't know I was still muted. Sorry. I think as you're talking to me, it's like, I think that's an important distinction because, and no offense to the Christians, but my experience, my religious experience, was that all the things you're talking about, the control, the if you don't do what I want you to, deconstructing away from that because that was God. That was, and so it's been interesting giving that up and realizing that's not how things work. And I think my guides have been a little more external. I get, since we're using internal, do you know what I mean? I think they've been a little more that way because I have such a heavy religious trauma background that they've been kind of on a little bit of overdrive saying, no, no, this is how this is supposed to be. That's not how this works. This is, and so they've been very, and I also think I'm finding out that my, not that bloodline is better than just learning, but it adds a different dimension, like some different tweaks, I guess, or quirks to things that are going on. And there are some, I'm finding out there's some mediumship abilities that go back a long ways in a couple of my bloodlines. And so I think that's why they're more external to me right off the bat, because it's a family thing, and I think because it benefits me. But definitely for sure, this is like, I know what you're saying, and I'm not worried about my guides because they're very, although I don't know that I'd call them gentle. I would think snarky would be a little better descriptor of all of them across the board. Like, they're not gentle. They're actually quite a little sarcastic. But anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of my experience with them. And the elementals kind of surprised me. I don't know, like if this ties in, but it's just been, like I said, it's been a really crazy few weeks. But I had weird things come through, like trolls. Like we did the session, and it was like there was like, that room got real crowded, like trolls and these elementals and Marians. Does anyone even know what those are? They're like little ant-like fae things that neither of us had any idea what they were. I had to go look them up because I'm like, what are these things that are showing up? And neither of us had any clue. So I don't know what the connection is there. And I think that's why maybe this one came in. So I think you're right. They'll they'll come back, but I did feel bad about yelling at it. So, but does anyone have any experience with stuff like that? Because it's crazy to me.
I would recommend researching, like trying to find, and with the things like elementals, that can mean so many different things. It depends on what tradition, who you're talking to, and what tradition they're from. They're going to have a little bit of a different kind of take on elements. I work directly with the elements. I don't perceive the elements as I don't know, like entities, though. It's like the whole spirit of them. I don't experience them in these other ways, but um trying to learn as much as you can from as many different perspectives on what that is, and feeling into what feels like truth to you, what feels like remembering, what feels real to you, and then kind of going from there. Because especially if you experience it frequently, if you're like, you know, hanging out and you are experiencing trolls showing up, like like it might be a good idea for you to be like researching everything you can about that, because it is a part of your lived experience. Even now, as you're just like really starting this deconstruction work, because the more you deconstruct, the more you're going to experience, because you're taking your blinders off, you're clearing your lens, and actually choosing to look when most of your life you've been trained to look away, and you've been trained to like reject things. And this oh man, I think it's more complicated than even that. I think that like when you talk about like bloodline witches, and it's complicated for those of us that look like this, because we converted, our lines converted a long time ago. And they're like, in essence, our like medicine people went underground, converted to Christianity. A lot of times they, you know, tried to hang on to the like old ways by just like using different language, but staying with kind of the heart. But generations and generations pass, and it just is not there. And now look at what we have, is this like all these uh people that are born with their clairs turned all the way up, and not there's no kind of guidance or training for us, because up until what, 30 years ago, most of us that would present in this way were institutionalized, or in other ways separated from the general population. And I think that like tracing back family lines of like giftings and things like that, like we could. I think it's another thing for egos to play with, though, of like, I come from a long line of witches and blah blah blah, and we didn't know because everyone was underground. Like, even my parents didn't talk about witchcraft. They were actively practicing, but it's not what, like, they were even in denial, and it was even worse the generation before, and the generation before, and the generation before. So even like strong, like powerful, like giftings can come through to a family that has never claimed witchcraft or never claimed any of this kind of stuff. And so it's kind of like it's muddy right now for us. And this is like very much jumping on the surface of a very complicated, very complex, very long process. Go ahead, Morgana.
One second.
We can do a pause dance. Wait for Morgana.
I'm back. Sorry.
All right, it's cool.
Going back to the issue of consent with spirits. I know deity work doesn't come up often in our circle, but the deities that I have had experience with, even though some of them can be demanding and require like an exclusive arrangement, there's always been a step that is consent. So at some point, they would ask, okay, do you want to enter this relationship? Do you want to be part of this? If an entity doesn't do that, that's like a huge, huge red flag. And even if they do ask for consent and you're not 100% sure what you're consenting to, that's a very good reason to say no. That's just what I wanted to add. It's helped me out a lot. That little safety tip.
I love that, Morgana. Do you know why deities require practices and require specific things, guys? It's fascinating. I love this. When working with a deity within a tradition, and that's so important, guys, is about the tradition that comes with that deity. It is a way of um, like programming your actual mind and body to align with a specific flow. And that deity is trying to get you to align with a flow that they are in. Does that make sense? Do you see what I mean there? And that's one of the reasons why, if you feel called to work with a deity, do your research. Really, really, really look into why is it that they want pomegranates on, this time of year. Why is that? Because if you are just doing something to check the box, you're not doing the thing. Knowing why something is done, why there is a practice that is done with this deity. Why do they prefer purple candles to whatever? All of these things have meaning and have purpose. And as we know with witchcraft, the more meaningful it is to you, the more of an effect it's going to have, either on your system or on the systems that you're involved with. But doing that research, it isn't this like they don't require something for no reason. They require you to cultivate a relationship with a thing or a practice for a reason. So that's really important. Um, so so there's that too. It's okay to ask why, because why makes it mean something to you. That whole idea of um, b- following blindly is kind of specific to like more of those dominion kinds of relationships. Go ahead, Petra.
Wanted to like agree, be like, sorry, I had to like re-download the app. Can you guys see me? Hear me? Okay. I don't have access to the chat for some reason. I was like trying to brainstorm it and then I was just like, never mind. I will figure out what the heck is going on because it's definitely not Mercury in retrograde right now. So I'm like, this is just probably a regular technology problem. This is hilarious. All I can see is like my teeth. Is that what you guys can see, or can you see my whole face? Okay, this is so random. Sorry, I was just like, so I'm like this for myself. So I was like, is that way for everybody else? I just need to gather my thoughts because I was like, I have to explain this part because I've been holding on to it for like an hour. My brain is like, dump this part so you can get to the next stuff. I really wanted to agree with what you're saying about what Morgana was saying about consent and boundaries. And I just wanted to be really clear, like, okay, because of religious trauma, like I don't do deities, like absolutely not. So sorry. So they're not my jam. Super respect for anybody who does. That's cool. Like you do you. We all have our own things. I was in a religion for like the majority of my life, and I'm kind of like, I'm good. Like I've bumped into deities every once in a while in different practice things. Like I had an encounter with the Morgan at like the first time I celebrated Samhain, like the first kind of Celtic journeying thing that I went with like a guide and like a group and stuff like that. And even in that encounter, like to be clear, I've read an inordinate amount of fantasy, like an inordinate amount of like mythology based fantasy, like Greek, Celtic, everything under the sun. So like the amount of like, I don't know, I would say like mythos that I have absorbed just like in consuming high fantasy because I'm a huge nerd has been like astronomical. And so I am someone who also like because of the TISM is like pattern recognition. And so I'm like when I had this first encounter with the Morgan, I basically asked, like I've had 2 encounters with her and I was like we were supposed to ask for something and we weren't given a ton of guidance about it. And so my system was like, I feel nervous about this. And so I on purpose was like, I have a question. What did I say? Something about like, I have a question for you, but I'm only willing to ask it if you will give me the answer completely free. And it was like, and it was this encounter with her where she was like, clever. And it was like that moment of like, I'm not saying they're contracts because I also think that you can break shit whenever you want. Like you're in the meat suit, you have the control. I think that people who are like, hey, you fucked with the wrong thing and you're in trouble. Like, I also think that there's a part of me that really thinks that like if you invite that type of thinking into your reality, then like confirmation bias is a thing. And so you will probably get fucked up shit if you think that like shit can fuck up your shit. That's just like a boundary that I have. I'm like, instead of determining what something can do, I'm like, I go at things with curiosity and also with like care and boundaries of being like, I don't know what this is, so I'm going to go slowly and I'm going to investigate and I'm going to do my homework and I'm not going to say yes to anything until I know exactly what the particulars are. Like, so that encounter, I just wanted to share that encounter because I feel like it's really important. Like you can also interact with deities and not have to like form a relationship. Like the second time I interacted with Morgan, I asked the same question and she was like, no, I need something this time. And I was like, okay, what do you need? And I was like, tell me exactly what you need is what I said. And I will see if I want to agree to it. And then it was like, I want you to feed my crows. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I want pet crows. Like, it's like, and I was like, but I also, because I have ADHD, was like, so if I forget, like, am I in trouble? Like, what are the particulars? She's like, no, like, just like make sure that they're taken care of. That's all. Like, like there was this moment of like, kid, like, okay. And I think but I don't like, she's not like, I'm not a devotee. She's not like, I also have deep like Scottish and Irish Celtic background. And so I felt comfortable doing that because of my ancestry. Like, and I don't want to like harp on like ancestry, but I also, this relates kind of to what Shanna was saying about kind of bloodline stuff and what Jen Marie was saying. And I was kind of bebopping around and doing stuff because I woke up as S.A.S.S started. so is that like, if anything is kind of popping up, it's worthwhile, like, you know, if certain things are coming up a lot, of looking into your ancestry and doing research related to that specific thing and your ancestry. I'm not saying ancestry is the penultimate. I'm saying that if you have a genetic connection to a practice, that's something, that's not nothing. And that doesn't mean it's the only thing. It just means that like you're already, you hold within you the wisdom of people who have walked that path before. And that's what epigenetics is to me as a scientist and as like a spiritual person. And so that's something that I look for. Like for me in healing religious trauma, I needed to go back to like, who were my people before they were Christians? I need to find them because I need to find my spirituality without the lens of Christianity, because that was the first lens I was introduced to, and I needed to see the world in a different way. Granted, a lot of my guides have been like, you've been seeing this world this way for a very long time, kid. Like this is not new. Like you kind of like, I as a person, because of how I was spiritually supported, I saw the world not through a Christian lens, very much through like an augmented lens anyway. So I think that there, you know, we all have our guides and we all have these connections to things. And I also wanted to say that I super agree about like things will come back, and you know, like you can, they're not, explain this, there's an immense amount of like shame and fear and control and whatnot that like I know I don't disrespect Christians, like the people specifically, but the tradition has had a huge effect, and the control dynamics of it have had a huge effect on our perception of spiritual things. And the truth of the matter is that like nature is not vindictive. Like the planet, the land, the earth, the space rock that we're all flying around on is not vindictive. It moves in cycles and patterns and relationships, right? Like if we get a hurricane, it's because of other weather cycles. It's because of global, like there are relationships that feed into that phenomenon, but it's not wrathful. Like it's not, it just is. And so it's, and I think that oftentimes we can think that like, because of the conditioning of like that, you know, a god that would like make the walls of a city fall or divide people by languages or like flood the entire planet because he was displeased, like these leave a certain fear-based like kind of imprint on our psyches. And I think that that's important. And that's not, even if you didn't grow up in church, you're surrounded by people who have been, and that fear of like I've conditioned certain bits of religious trauma stuff, or like been conditioned to certain bits of religious trauma stuff and been like, oh my goodness, like I'm afraid of good things because of learning about Job when I was like 5. Like if I get too much good shit, God's gonna take it all away from me and kill everyone I love. Cool, that's a huge wound, and that's like the energetics of that is kind of intense. And so I just wanted to point to those things as well, is that like often the way that we engage with some of this stuff, we're not aware of like the more subtle elements of our conditioning, how they're kind of feeding into things. And in my experience, of much like what you were saying, Chana, is just like, yeah, like my guides are sassy as fuck, but it's all done in actual love, and it's not in the, it's more in the like, oh, okay, we'll explain this to you again. Like it's not in a like, and it's done in that like riffing loving way, not in the like, you should be ashamed that you're asking questions, how dare you. Like there's none of that contempt or like frustration or anger. It's like done in like, all right, okay, we'll do it again. So here's the thing, you know, and like that's the most that I kind of get from spirituality. Whereas, I mean, I didn't experience this in Christianity, but I had a weird internal experience where like I was hearing the voice of God, but I wasn't actually hearing the voice of God. I was hearing like my higher self and kind of spirit guides. And so like my external experience of how people spoke about how God would take things away or test you, or those things were very intense. And so I think that I just wanted to shed light on that piece and be like, hey, like that can come into play here, and just know that like those things, that conditioning is super present, and the fears or like, did I fuck this up? Like, those are valid. It makes sense. Like, it makes total sense, because like we've all kind of gone through this, like in our own ways, like this social conditioning of like, you know, you got to be perfect, you got to figure it out, and if you don't, like, it's all hooped. And it's like, if you look at this, like if you look at the natural world, that's where I like often reference, is that like trees don't get reprimanded for growing the wrong way. Like, they just do the thing. They just do the thing every year. They just try again. Like, oh, just a little bit this thing and the elements, and this is, so I only got this much this year. There's no like person with an abacus being like, only this much. I don't know, the clipboard, like, you're only getting a like 5 out of 10 this year. Like, there, Greg. Like, no, like that's not how it works. And so I think that that's always an important piece to me to bring up, is just that, like, we have so much evidence in the natural world of just there's always chances, there's always relationship, there's always connection, there's always options. And my final thing would just be like, being really specific with the boundaries that you put in place when you're calling things into your space. Not because as a person, I'm not particularly afraid of like what might come in, because like I know I can deal with whatever. But also because like if your clairs are turned on, shit gets loud. Like, it gets distracting. So like there's certain points in my journey where I've had to be like, I only have capacity for this feedback and from these places, and everything else is just going to have to put pause. I don't have the capacity. My nervous system can't handle it. We're not doing it. And I think that the remembering that you're always in the driver's seat, and if you're like, my body doesn't feel good about this, it's worth sitting with whatever that is first, rather than going to something external and being like, I need more input. Because sometimes you actually need less input, because you need space to integrate what you're learning, what's going on, what's coming in. Does that make sense for everybody? I can't access the chat, so if anyone has any questions, feel free, but I'm gonna hand it over to whoever's next.
Go ahead, Jenna.
I was just gonna, like, some of the stuff she said, just I don't know if anyone else grew up like this, but like, does anyone else remember reading Edgar Allan Poe's The Monkey's Paw in high school, and the trauma? Or maybe it just didn't like resonate with everyone that way, but like that's what I grew up with. So that, and then that image of God being if you don't do it perfectly, I'm going to punish you. And then my mother praying for us, and then having things go awry, like praying that my sister's navel piercing might get infected, which it did twice. Praying for my stepdad to find humility, and then he had a massive stroke, which he did find humility. Things like that, where she would tell us, oh, I prayed for this and this was the result. Like, I don't think my mom realizes that she practices baneful magic, but that's a whole other thing. But that to me, manifestation always came with a price. It was always like trying to manifest as asking God, asking any deity or anyone, asking for things was like asking a spiteful genie. And so so I've always struggled to manifest it. Is the point being, I didn't go looking for deities or other entities to come into my space specifically because of that, because I don't trust my own intuition enough to know who they are and what they're doing. A few of them have just decided to show up and be for reasons, but it's weird because like that's why my guides have been very clear that that's why I have like training wheels on, because that's how I think of manifestation. That's how I think of asking for stuff. And they don't want me doing stupid shit, essentially, is kind of what they've said, unintentionally. But yeah, deities, weird. I'm glad Morgana brought that up, because they're a totally different thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dominate this thing. I just have all these random questions because it's just been this wild thing of like stuff coming in I'm not ready, like that I don't think I'm ready for, but it's all just kind of like popping up. Yes, Jen.
I'm trying to follow the rules here. Kat, did you have a weigh in?
Yeah.
Okay, Kat first, and then I'll go.
First off, I don't think you're dominating anything, because the reason we're still discussing this is because it's something we're all interested in, and it's a path that is definitely something that we all want to look into and to just really dig into and deep into it. But as we were all talking, I was thinking this is the importance of educating ourselves. Because as a young kid, I had so many different experiences. I went to a Methodist church. I went to a Catholic church because my friend had a Catholic church. And I didn't understand, even as a young kid, why those two experiences with the same God was so completely different. One of them taught me that it was a loving God. One of them taught me that no, unless you follow X, Y, Z, dot, 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 you're completely unworthy. I just remember being in a Catholic church telling me, everybody going, yelling at me that I was unworthy. And I was like, who are you to say that I'm unworthy? Like, this is completely wrong. I am a completely worthy being. And it really, just having that education, those different experiences, got me to look inside myself more than expecting answers from other people. And I've just always been that way. You can tell me a certain thing, but I have to look in myself and see if that resonates with who I am and what I can plainly see in front of me. And when they don't resonate together, that's when I have to question what I'm being told and do more research into what it is that they're trying to tell me about my lived experience. And one thing that sticks out humongously in my youth is American Indians. My grandmother had some terrible things to say about Native Americans. She absolutely hated Native Americans. I had to pass through a reservation every single time that we went to see her, and I saw how they lived. Even just passing through, you could see these little tiny houses, and they didn't have stores, and they didn't have schools, and you couldn't see any of these things going on within this community. So they had to go outside their community, and then they were hated, and they were ostracized, and they were all these different things. And I'm like, Grandma, you are so wrong. Like, look what you did. Look at where you put these people. Look at their experience. Look at the way they're living. I can see this at 8 years old, that this is just where you put them because of your whatever. And I'm like, that's just so wrong. I don't understand how you can feel that way about that. But that's another experience where I had, where this is what my grandmother was trying to tell me. And I looked inside myself and I said, no, this is wrong. And I feel that way about a lot of the things that we talk about, that it's really all within me to find out what I want, what my experience is going to be, and how I learn and grow as a person. And I really think education is a huge part of that. Grow outward, experience all the experiences you can have, so you can relate to everyone on a different level. But yeah. Oh, one more thing. This is why I also chose butterflies for my witch's ladder. I haven't made it yet, but it made me think of that too, was that they're in this cocoon, and you have to go into that dark space, and then you have to push, and you have to really push with your wings to pop out and be the beautiful butterfly that you're going to be. So that's one of the reasons I chose that charm for my witch's ladder. I'm done.
I gotta say, like, I talk to so many witches every single day, and one of the things that amuses me the most is how intuitive you guys are, and how so many of you talk about the same exact thing, like, in a week. I told the support team this before, that oftentimes my life feels like one of those 80s sitcoms where everyone in the family is experiencing the exact same, like, life lesson, but in a different, like, way. And this whole conversation today has been a reflection of conversations that I've had all week long. And some of the stuff coming up is like very recent, even like observations. And you guys just, when we get together, tap into each other. And now it's just like, man, I know that's super cryptic because I also, do a lot the things that I do a lot of private sessions and I can't talk to you guys about a lot of the things that are going on with all of y'all, but that's one of the reasons why I'm like, hey guys, by raise of hearts, how many of you are experiencing this? Because like it's so common and there's so, for me, it's really validating to know that oftentimes when I'm feeling the big pulls or the very heavy things, the things that are really dominating my perspective that I'm really struggling with, like it's more of a our whole community is experiencing this thing. It's kind of how humans interact with the type of energy that is happening at that season. Because we do follow the seasons in ways that are fucking fascinating. And the way that our physical bodies react to sunlight and those kinds of things, it's anyway, I just had a moment listening, sitting back and listening to that conversation. I'm like, ah, damn, Kat, you're super tapped in and you don't even know. So that was fun. That was fun and magical. And thank you. And I had something else, but I forgot because I didn't write it down. So funny. I can't wait. I'm going to be posting the video of the croquet party yesterday today on my TikTok so that you guys can see it. It was so funny. For those of you that met Maggie this last week at my sister at the town hall, Maggie was there in her big pretentious floppy hat. Anyway, like I don't know where that came from. Oh, the other thing, I have not slept more than like 4 hours a night in the last week. Like, have not been able to sleep. On summer solstice, I couldn't get to sleep till like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was so. Is anyone else having trouble sleeping, or is this just a me thing? And yeah, it's a whole thing. And I know it's some of it is because like it's light all like 24 hours a day where I live right now. But this is it's a whole thing. Julie, was it Julie that had their hand up?
I was just raising my hand to say yes, that I've been feeling.
Okay. Yeah, I have not been sleeping. So I'm like a little bit, boo. Aw, Persephone. And then distracted by a puppy. And now we have it, a rare moment of still cuddles. A puppy. I'm not going to sit and narrate Persephone, though. I would really love to. Hi, little puppy. Go ahead, Petra.
I was mesmerized by the puppy. I just wanted to, because I was like frantically becoming a conscious person when Ocean asked their question about the solar return piece. So I just wanted to like provide some resources if that's okay. There are various astrologers about different things, but I really like the Chani app, and her page on Instagram is pretty good about different themes and different things. But even if you just like look, I was like, how do I do this? And then so I just looked up Saturn return, and then there's like a Saturn return survival guide. And something that I like for astrology, and I think it's really interesting when we're talking about like different things that are happening, in terms of like, that is where I started looking at what was happening to me energetically, and that's what got me into astrology. There was the pattern recognition piece. It was very much I do hear what Karen was saying. There are people definitely that are like, Mercury's in retrograde, so like I did this really messed up stuff, and it's like, that's not really what that's for. Like it's more like the trend of the themes of what might come up during that season, or during that time. I'm a Cancer sun. All I have like 70% water in my chart, so like lots and lots. But like I am very much someone who like relates to the moon. And I have had a relationship since I was a child, like just as a planet, and so the astrological information around that has been really helpful. And I think it helps with like themes, but I think it can be overwhelming because it's a whole discipline. I have a friend who literally like is a professional astrologer, and she learned like how to read Greek and Aramaic and different things to like, I mean, she's also deeply autistic, so like that's one of her special interests is astrology. So she teaches me things, but like she's so like up here, and I'm like, wait, can you like go back 500 steps, huh? And so we have the most interesting conversations about things, and she's really helped me with some things. But I find like getting a good app or like some kind of centralized place where you can kind of get things. So like I use Pattern, because it's really good for journal prompts, honestly. If you're like looking for shadow work stuff, like it's a really good like hack for that. And Time Passages is another one that's like free, basically, that I use for just like, where's the moon? Like, what sign are we in? But also the Chani app does that as well. And that one you have to pay for the extra stuff, and I'm like broke, so I don't do those things. But like her articles or blog stuff or things like that, if you're looking for more information, are usually like really balanced, is what I appreciate about her. It's not the scare tactic stuff. If anyone has ever used CoStar, I'm so sorry for like your experience, because like that app to me was the most judgmental, shaming place of my life. And I was like, this is awful. I feel terrified of the world and terrible about myself. And I feel judged and shamed all the time. I deleted it like after a month. I was like, absolutely not. And apparently the co-founder also said that they like on purpose mess with people's charts sometimes. And I was like an Aries rising on that. And I was like, this does not track. And literally I'm not this anywhere else. So there was also those things. I just wanted to info dump about that piece, and also just say that like sometimes astrology is helpful for me in the terms of like, there's the houses and then the planets, is looking at like, I like the Chani app for the wheel for the houses, because it will give you a good idea, and then you can kind of see like, do you have a stellium, which is more than 3 planets in a sign, and you can then Google those things of being like, I have Cancer, 3 placements in Cancer in my 5th house. And so I have a 5th house Cancer stellium. That means I can go look and be like, what does this specific chunk of information mean thematically for my life? I don't look at it as prescriptive, like you're going to be in, like, I look at it as like descriptive. It's data, it's information. It's like, how do I make sense of some of the themes in my life? What might this tool help support me in understanding myself or exploring areas in my life that I might not know how to look at them? And this will give me like a jumping off point potentially. That's also where I really like Pattern, because it's really like very good for the journal prompt piece. And I think astrology is like, it evolved from like agrarian science and political science to like also include individuals and things like that. And so if you end up studying it, there's lots to study. There's lots of like nerdy things to hyperfixate on and like to like go into and whatnot. So but I think, you know, for for Saturn return stuff is just looking at the two things that kind of popped up when you were talking, Ocean, was like, what planet in your chart is Saturn in, and what are the themes of that placement? So like, is it in Pisces? Is it in Gemini? Is it in whatever? And looking at those themes, and then what is Saturn in now? And over the phases, because like it's not exact because of the length of Saturn's cycle. It's like roughly people get their Saturn return somewhere between 27 and 30. And it might not be exact. So Saturn might be in different signs as you're kind of in that window of like, you're now evolving into an adult, and not evolving, but like transitioning life-wise into an adult, and the themes that can kind of come up with that. And also it's worth looking at like what house Saturn is in your chart, and what are the themes of that house, and how does that kind of relate to themes that are coming up in your life, and how might that kind of like help you like be observing of kind of those trends. I'm not someone who's like, yeah, like I like the descriptive, not prescriptive approach, because I just like the prescriptive feels like predestination from Christianity, and also like more like fortune telling, and like I don't have free will, and I'm very much someone who's like, F that, I will do what I want. And so so I just wanted to add those pieces of kind of thoughts and themes, and also say in terms of the solstice, I don't know if this is anyone else's experience, but this is kind of a trend that I've noticed over the past couple of solstices, is that and I've heard other people say this, so this is kind of other witches in other places that I am, that like the solstices are like these transitional points. And so I think that there can be a lot of energy with that kind of like things were this way and now they've moved to a different way, like the days were getting longer and now they're going to be getting shorter, and just that theme. And also it's often too, I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but it's often a time, and I've heard other people say this, that if when the veil is a bit thin, is around these kind of like transitional moments, which makes sense. Like the energy is kind of intense sometimes, like it can be quite potent, and so there can be lots of things that come through, or themes around that stuff that come up. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And also I'm someone who's like, I have to do so much stuff to be like, okay, nervous system, I know you're picking up on all this stuff, but like we gotta go to bed. And still, even with that, I'm like 6 hours every night, which like I need like 7.5 to 9 because of trauma brain healing stuff. It's just like, I'm wrecked. I'm so tired. So I am with everyone who's like, this is sleepy. And I think that, you know, hopefully as we kind of get further away from that transitional point, things will kind of, and it's also worth sometimes, I find, when like I'm like having a lot of trouble sleeping. This was also how like new moons and full moons became. I was like, okay, like these are not just like other people, like the energies, whatever. I'm like, I'm actually tracking my own data and noticing that like I have more sleep disturbances around these things, and not just because like now my period is synced up to that stuff, but also like I was like having my period on the full moons and then ovulating on the new moons, and I was like, cool body, because the external energy is not enough. We gotta just like tag team on that. Thanks so much. But yeah, so I just wanted to share those pieces, and I would love to hear what anybody else has to say about that, or whatever else we want to talk about.
Thank you, Petra. That was so helpful.
Also, your puppy is like so adorable. My like heart hurts. Like, why? I'm like, no, I have 3 dogs. I cannot, but I want.
She knows you're talking about her. Look at that. She's like, what?
She's very attuned to the community, and she constantly tries to eat bees. So bees are my community saints. So she loves you guys. Oh, yeah, you do. Sit down.
Oh my God, they're getting so big. Oh,
Hi. Say hello. Hello. Nice to meet you. Okay, we'll stop.
and everyone's like, no, give us the puppy.
I know. I should just do a live stream of her enclosure.
Right. Like, hilarious. We had a Kava out. We took the whelping box. We had this like playpen for all of the puppies. It's like 8 foot squared. We put that out in the yard when we were doing the croquet yesterday. And it's Kava's first real, like significant long-term experience with grass. And she wouldn't lay down in it. She wouldn't lay in the grass. I had to bring her bed out and put it like in the very center of the 8x8 because she's smart enough that she could figure out that she could use it to climb out. So I put it in the very center and had to put her blanket on it in order for her to actually like, oh, Mugwort, look at him. Oh my God, he's huge. For those of you that don't know, Mugwort and Persephone are my familiars, Rufio and Stella's puppies. These are their puppies. And these puppies were witnessed by like Hulk. Oh, there's, and that right there is their brother. I could go grab Kava too. Um, yeah, these are all familiars. They're amazing. Oh my God. It's been so cool watching them kind of grow up. And this litter was different than any litter of puppies that I have ever interacted with or done. And I think they are my sixth litter in my whole time ever actually like breeding uh puppies. Uh but they like everything about from conception to birth and the entire puppy time was all very, very intentional and very, very focused on what their purpose is. And their purpose is to be a witch's companion. And they're just different. They're as barely dogs as Rufio is barely a dog, and sometimes even more. Like Kava is so I'm so impressed with her, like even more impressed with her. Kava is their sister and my daughter's familiar. I'm so impressed with her, like more so than I was with Rufio. Rufio, we knew something was different about him when we first got him because he was like, he knew all of his basic commands before I even left Kim's house when I stayed with her the first few days that I had Rufio. And he was just like, just different. And these guys are the same kind of just different. And the fact that Mugwort, like he survived because of the witches working on, for him, because he was not expected to live at all. Like the vet did, because he aspirated milk the like within a couple hours of when he was born and got a really bad sinus infection. And we ended up needing to like suction his nose every like 2 hours around the clock for the first 4 or 5 weeks of his life. And all of Mugwort's siblings are known as Mugwort siblings. Even Rufio at the vet, and even Rufio and Stella are Mugwort's parents because everybody knows this puppy that wasn't expected to survive and ended up pulling through. And he is tenacious. That is. We can sit and talk about puppies if you guys are cool. If there's anything else that you guys want to talk, Mugs the Thug, that's funny.
Mugs the Thugs.
If there's anything else you guys want to talk about, we're cool.
My vet says that you would never have even known that he had any type of problem whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. And his sinus infection cleared up like what, 2 days after Roxanne decided to adopt him. And then it was just like gone. So, God, look how big Dandy is. And he still likes being held like a baby. That's so funny. Kind of.
What's amazing is that Mugwort is almost as big as Dandy.
Yeah, that's.
They're only like two. They're like 2 ounces. Dandy's like 2 ounces bigger.
So crazy. Kava's smaller.
Yeah, Mugs was
I think
22.2.
Yeah, I think Kava's just like 20 pounds.
But
I think oh my gosh.
Don't sit on my computer.
Kava's been playing with ice cubes. She's the introduction to ice cubes, and it's been so funny. Dessa came home the other day. I love puppy sitting. Dessa came home the other day. She's like, "Did you happen to give Kava 3 ice cubes?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you know how I know that?" And I was like, "Were there 3 perfect little puddles in the bathroom where she knocked them underneath the bathroom door?" And she's like, "Yep." Because they like skid across the floor like little like hockey pucks, and they're the most fun in the whole world in her little enclosure. And it's hilarious to watch them go after it. Oh, Maria, I still need to send you the experiment to like test your allergies. It's like it could be awesome or it could be real bad and you like need to, right? Because I'm in my head, I'm going to send you some of Stella's fur in a little witchy glass vial because that's how we do things, right? And then one with Rufio's fur to see if you react. And then maybe even one of Kava's like separately because science, right? We have to know. Is it Rufio? Is it Stella or is it the combination? Maybe that because Maria's allergic to dogs, but she wasn't to one of the puppies or was not much.
Yeah. I was part of the puppy transport services to get Sage from Alaska to Massachusetts. And we had a great adventure. And I'm allergic to every breed of dog I've ever come in contact with, even the ones that have hair and this and that. But I mean, Sage was all up in my business and I did not have like a problem. I did take an allergy pill every day, but even still around other dogs, I still normally would react. I just had it was just really surprising to me. I hadn't interacted with a dog like that since I was a child, like before I had symptoms. So it was really amazing experience for me. And so now we're all into like the science of it. Like, is it something about their fur? Because how they're bred. And I've been like heavily researching that type of fur. People seem to have less allergies, which is interesting because they're so floofy. So yeah, it's been so it's yeah, and Melanie pointed out like you could just come back to Martha's Vineyard. I'm like, yeah, I could do that too. Like I am Massachusetts. I could definitely go like visit Sage and see if I react. So yeah, that was the that's the experiment, so everybody knows.
I interacted with the lady that created this particular breed, and she is just like she you could tell that it is her whole heart and soul. Like she is really intense about the dogs, but one of her claims was that they are you have less allergies because of how much samoyed is in their genetics. And I just assumed that it was, an excited breeder that thinks that their dogs are the absolute best. So when I heard that from Maria, I was like, oh, like she did say that, but, you know, oh, but yeah, they're really fluffy.
Yeah, and even in that weekend that Karen, Millie, Abby, and I, we were just all sit around and we'd be like, what do you think? Like, what do you think about Sage? And I'd be like, I don't know. I think she's really smart. And everyone would be like, yeah, she's really smart. And she was only 8 weeks old. And it was like, this is incredible. Like, it was even apparent at that young age. It really is unbelievable. I know we all like talk about the puppies, but it's really true. Like I can't, I'll never get over it. Like it will always be a lifelong memory for me of that time.
They're I'm not not exaggerating when I say they are barely dogs. Like I joke with about Rufio. We have full conversations and he communicates better than like a lot of people I know. He's very clear about what he needs and things like that. And uh like you don't know until you interact with them that they're barely dogs. They're very present and aware, and you can absolutely tell that they are trying to work out what it is that you're trying to communicate with them. You can see their minds working. They're not like puppies. They're like, what are you doing? It's just they have their moments, of course, because puppy bodies, but their minds are something else. Go ahead, Petra.
I wanted to data dump a bit about the allergy piece because I was like, my husband is allergic to dogs, and so I did a lot of research like when we first got dogs because I was like, oh no, like he'd reacted before, and everybody thinks it's like hair, but it actually is more about like proteins in like the urine and the saliva. But I was just like, I wonder what's come of it now because I haven't looked at it for like 5 years. And also I'd seen a few things on TikTok about like allergies in animals and different things that people can be allergic to and not. And apparently, I guess like some people can be specifically allergic to male dogs because of the protein that they're allergic to is produced by the male prostate. And so when animals pee, then that like gets all over their fur and all the things. And also puppies are less allergenic because they produce less dander. They're not as dry as older dogs. So lots of times people can, that's why people will like get a puppy sometimes and then be like, oh, like my allergies are really bad. And it's like, as the animal ages, it's like, you're kind of hooped. That's the whole thing. And that they shed more of those proteins and things. But if you want to Google it yourself, Maria, it's like from CNN Health. It says allergic to dogs. It may only be males. And there's lots of like actually decent information in here about like different elements of the allergies and also why like hypoallergenic dogs don't really exist. They're kind of a misnomer because it's not just like the producing less dander. It's like there's different types of proteins and they're often in like the urine or the saliva or like things like that. And so like it's more about like potentially the research looks like it's going towards like what protein group are you allergic to or what ones. Like there's about 5. So I just was like, this is so cool and I love this shit so much. So I was like, I'm gonna share this with you. I think your hair test might still work, but if you gather the hair, maybe you're gathering it from a site closer to where they go to the washroom or like that could get back spray. That'll maybe get your results like a little bit more specific. If that is that piece, especially it would be interesting to see if like it's less with Stella and with Kava because they're females. Like that would be maybe a little piece in that, but just something food for thought.
I love that.
Yeah, I definitely.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Marie.
go ahead, Demery.
No, I love that we're at our heart, we are scientists, right? And what I'm hearing is that you agree that with the separate is like this is a good start. And I'm so gonna be like as careful as possible with the collection. I'm probably even going to like clean the comb in between dogs and just kind of like brush them all over with the comb and try and get like a good sample because science is awesome and like I would like to figure this out for me. Like how cool is that? The other thing with this breed as well is they don't produce the oils that a lot of dogs produce. Like they don't need bathing very often, maybe twice a year at most, because of how that like the triple coat that they have and they don't have a smell to them. They don't smell like dog, you know? Like a you can smell like a pit. You can smell labs, you can smell hound dogs, you know, they have an odor to them. These dogs don't have an odor. And uh I wonder if some of that has to do with the like allergy to dogs. Now that you brought up that, because the proteins would be in that oil as well that they excrete. So lots of fluff, but it's not stinky fluff. But we are down to our last 2 minutes, and we can just like watch puppies for a couple minutes. If anybody, you know, I don't know if we have time to even answer questions at this point, but we'll get all into the stuff.
I've
Oh,
enjoyed them this afternoon. Yeah.
I'm gonna see if Kava's right outside, so I'll be right back. 'Cause I'll get Kava.
But thank you, Petra. I've definitely done a lot of research also, and yes, it's super interesting, the whole allergy thing.
It's so interesting. I also just have like a quick question, like a tech question with this piece of like, I don't have access to the chat. If I continue to have issues with that, is there somewhere that I email to look into that? Like I can do it from the team side of things, but I'm also wondering like, is there possibly a restriction on your guys' end because I'm coming in as a guest or anything like that? And who would I message about that? That's the only piece that I was like, I'm troubleshooting this in my own mind as I'm thinking about it because my brain can't let it go. But just wondering, like,
Yeah. Our email is support@brightanddark.org, and we could have our admin look into it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Kava. Oh, he's like, I'm busy. You've interrupted my day. You've interrupted me.
She doesn't want me to hold her. She only wants Dessa to hold her.
Yeah.
Hi, puppies. Hi. Puppies. Well, they still recognize my voice.
Yeah, it's so funny when I scroll across a TikTok that's from you. She stops and she comes over. She'll like boop the screen sometimes too.
That's adorable. All right, it's that time, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday. And may your practice be expansive and filled with many blessings, bright and dark. Bye, guys. Bye, puppies.